So it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Eamonn Wall, who lives in St. Louis and is a professor of Irish Studies and English at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. He teaches courses in Irish, Irish American, and British literature. He directs the university's Irish Summer School in Galway, and he serves as the director of the Irish Studies program. And he does take students to Galway every summer, and I have a flyer if you want to look at it afterwards. Earned 6 credits in 4 weeks at the University of Galway, June 16th through July 13th. And we have sent Missouri Southern students before with him to Galway, and it's a fabulous experience. He is a native of Enniscorthy, County Wexford, Ireland. And if Enniscorthy sounds familiar to you, it's because it's the Irish town featured in the novel Brooklyn by Colm Tóibín, which several classes are reading this semester. I found this fascinating. I just learned it this morning, but Dr. Wall and Colm Tóibín attended primary school together in Enniscorthy, and they still maintain regular contact. Dr. Wall has lived in the United States since 1982, but has managed to keep his Irish accent. He was educated at University College Dublin, the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and the City University of New York Graduate Center, where he received his PhD in English. He's the author of 3 prose books and several collections of original poetry. In his 11 o'clock presentation today, he will be reading some of the poems that focus on his hometown of Enniscorthy. Dr. Wall also helped us plan our Ireland semester, recommending some of the other speakers and a couple of the films we are showing. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Eamonn Wall.
That's great, Chad. It's wonderful to be here. Good morning, everybody. My thanks to Chad for inviting me and for those remarks, and to Kyle and Scott and Bea here, who are helping me in all kinds of ways with the technology this morning. Who here is Irish or has some Irish? Okay. Very good. All right. Okay. Very good. And of course, I suppose Irish is in our background. It's part of our heritage. But also, I think Ireland is a place that becomes part of our world by coming to lectures, by reading the books, and by attending events like this. Dr. Stebbins mentioned that about my students coming to Galway every year. Most of these students who come to Galway every year have no Irish background, but they're interested in Ireland, and they've learned about Ireland from films, from books, from music, and things like that. And also, they have an idea in their mind that Ireland is an interesting and different kind of place that they would like to explore, you know. So I think that some of us are Irish by birth, others are Irish by family, but we all can be Irish in various ways, right? By engaging with it. Now, some of us are more Irish than others. My father was Irish in every single thing that he did. If he was picking up a spoon and putting sugar in his coffee, he was doing this as an Irish person. Everything he did was Irish, right? But you know, so when you think of Ireland, and when you're going forward through this wonderful semester of Irish programming, you are Irish. You're becoming Irish. You're becoming more Irish. So these things are things I think to keep in mind. So what I'm going to do this morning is this is the beginning of this wonderful semester of programming. So I am going to just go back to a kind of basic slides and show them to you and try to engage you in conversation about them. I want to present kind of idiosyncratic little bits and pieces about Ireland. And I do this in my own classes. On Tuesday, we had a graduate class on this play, fantastic play by Brian Friel called Translations. And I said to myself, to understand this play, maybe you need a lot of background. But if I went and gave the background, the 2 hours would pass and we would never get to the play. So instead, what I do is I kind of immerse the students in the play, and then in each class, I present these kinds of slides to do with history and literature and politics and all these kinds of things. And it's like a jigsaw puzzle. So I'm hoping after 10 or 12 or 14 weeks, all the jigsaw puzzle pieces will come together into something coherent. So we always begin with music. So we're going to begin now with a song from the film Once. This is the first Irish song ever to win an Oscar for best song. So, and it takes us into modern day Dublin. So you've got your thinking caps on. We are now in Dublin. So go ahead, B.
Games that never amount to more than they're meant will play themselves out. Take this sinking boat and port it home. We've still got time.
All right, so at the beginning, it is Grafton Street in Dublin, which is the main shopping street. So when you go into Dublin, you'll go by Trinity College, and then you'll walk up Grafton Street to St. Stephen's Green. So this is what these are various images of what Dublin looks like. The singer is Glenn Hansard, and the woman singer is Margareta Iglova, and she is from the Czech Republic. So I wanted to start with something that maybe would connect last year's country with the Czech Republic with this year's, which is Ireland, right? And of course, what's happened in Ireland since about 1990 is that there's a huge growth of immigration into Ireland. If we go back in Irish history is always about Irish people coming to America, coming to Australia, coming to England, coming to Argentina. But because of the great wealth that Ireland has generated in the last 30 or 40 years, the population of Ireland has grown by 1 million people in the last 25 years. And one of the reasons is because of inward immigration from Africa, from South America. Just before I came back from Ireland last month, I went to get my hair cut, and the man who cut my hair was from Brazil. You know, and the singer Margareta is from the Czech Republic, and there's a lot of people from the Czech Republic in Ireland. If you go to Dublin, English is the main language. Maybe the second most spoken language in Dublin now is Chinese. I know there's more than one Chinese language, I know, but you know, and Polish would maybe be the third. And of course, recently then, Ukrainian, because of the Ukrainian war, there are lots of Ukrainians in Ireland. So the Ireland that we imagine is different now, you know. Okay, very good. We'll go on to the next one. All right, but now we're going to go back 5,000 years to Newgrange in County Meath. So this is 5,000 years old, and it was it's one of the most famous of the sites that you would visit in Ireland. Originally, it didn't have the grass on top of it, you know, that grew, but it's this massive building made of stone, and it's called a passage tomb. So if we could go on. So if we could just play the. So we just need to go down a little bit. Okay, here. Oh, very good. So just take a listen, take a look.
Out of the mists of the Stone Age, this structure has stood since the dawn of recorded history. This rounded tomb, called Newgrange, has stood on the bend of Ireland's River Boyne for more than 5,000 years. It is massive, distinct, and very mysterious. The mound of earth covers a rock passageway, which leads to a central chamber where the ashes and bones of the dead were placed. Long thought to be just a tomb, in the late 1960s, archaeologists uncovered an amazing secret that shed new light on this ancient structure. On the winter solstice, the longest night and shortest day of the year, a shaft of light enters a perfectly positioned window and lights up the 60-foot corridor that leads to the basin of ancestral bones. An impressive feat of engineering, considering its Stone Age builders possessed only rudimentary technologies.
Is particularly important because it's been proven without doubt that it was very deliberately aligned to sunrise at the winter solstice.
Its facade is of white quartz,
All right.
restored by a...
Isn't that amazing? Newgrange. So if you go to Dublin, and you can just get the bus out, and it will take you to Newgrange, and also a lot of people who are interested in ley lines, you know, will connect Carramore and Sligo to Newgrange, to Stonehenge, to the various sites throughout Europe, all the way to the pyramids in Egypt, and the sun that comes in on the solstice also in some ways is a representation of a fertility symbol, that in a way that the Newgrange is also symbolizes the woman, you know, the mother, and the light is the kind of you know, the fertilization, and that hardly any of the rock was native to the area, so it had to be brought in from 20, 30, 40 miles away in a time without backhoes and bulldozers and trucks and all of that. Interesting, right? Would you like to go there? The time you'd really want to go there is for the winter solstice, right? But that's the only time that you have to book to go there, because everybody wants to be there on that day. So they take reservations, but you'd have to wait for maybe 10 years, you know. They say, well, we can take you in 10 years' time. A problem, though, is what happens if it's a cloudy day, as is often the case in Ireland in the winter. There's no sun, and you don't see anything, you know, so you go, and they don't give you your money back, I think, you know. Ordinarily, you can just go and visit. Okay, very good, B. All right. With Irish saints, we we think of St. Patrick, so St. Patrick is the great Irish saint. But the great Irish female saint is St. Bridget, right? And St. Bridget is a very, very interesting saint. Like many Irish saints, she is a figure from the pre-Christian times and also from the Christian times, right? So a lot of pre-Christian important figures were kind of incorporated into Christianity. So, and St. Patrick is a man, right? So St. Bridget is the great and the most important of the Irish women saints. And either last year or this year, the Irish government made a public holiday in honor of St. Bridget. So the 1st of February is now a public holiday because all of the other holidays seem to be associated with men, right? So you needed one that was associated with women. So go ahead. And of course, this is the St. Bridget cross. If you go into Irish houses, you see many of these St. Bridget crosses. When we were children and we'd visit our relatives in Bunclody, our aunts would take us down by the river at the end of January and we'd gather up the reeds and we'd bring the reeds back and wash the reeds and you'd put them on the kitchen table and the women then would make St. Bridget's crosses, right? And then the crosses are placed in a prominent place in the house. And then at the end of the year then they're burned. And a new cross is there. So they're very beautiful, right? And you can buy them in Ireland. You can also buy plastic ones and everything, that were there forever. So we had the feast day is the 1st of February. The 1st of February is the first day of spring in Ireland. Spring is February, March, April. Summer is June, July, and August. And you say to yourself, August is fall, or sorry, June, July, May, June, and July are the summer, and August is the first month of fall. And you'd say to people, is that couldn't be the case? Like if you're here in Joplin in August, But then people will say to you in Ireland in August, you begin to feel a shortening of the day. And also you begin to feel a chill in the evening. So you have to get your fleece out and put it on, right? Other people will say, the weather's always bad in Ireland, it doesn't make any difference, right? But this in a sense in our calendar is the beginning of spring. The ancient name is Imbolc. So this is the pre-Christian or the pagan celebration, the one that puts Bridget back in the pagan times rather than in the Christian times. So Ireland, as we know, we think of Ireland as a very Catholic country, a very Christian country, but there's this layer upon layer of pre-Christian faith and belief and history as well. All right. Any questions so far? Any comments? Any complaints? It's too early for a complaint, right? All right. I don't mind complaints as long as it doesn't come accompanied by a 2x4. I'm good, right? But we are the Fighting Irish, right? So I know, So all right, go ahead, B. All right. So, what's the most famous book in Ireland? And of course, it's the Book of Kells in Trinity College in Dublin, and it's an illustrated Bible from 484 A.D. So it's in Latin, and it is the monks were hiding out in their monasteries, and they were working on these, made these beautiful books. And there's a number of these in Europe, but this is the most famous one, and you see this in Trinity College in Dublin, right? And they turn a different page usually every day or so, and it's considered to be one of the most beautiful illustrated Bibles in the world. Okay, go ahead. And you find it here in the library in Trinity College. Any Harry Potter people here? All right. So when J.K. Rowling then modelled the Hogwarts Library on this one in this library in Trinity College, Dublin, right? So it's one of the most famous libraries in the world, right? So kind of nice looking building, right? You know. So and if you go to who's been in Dublin? All right. So you've been in Trinity College Library and you've seen the Book of Kells. All right. It's fantastic. What's your name? Glenda. Glenda. What did you think of the Book of Kells? I don't have the words. Okay. You were left speechless by it? Okay. Yeah. And you saw it too? No. Yes. Yeah. It was gorgeous. Okay. All right. Very good. So that's a college in Dublin. I went to the other college, University College Dublin. So we disapprove of Trinity College Dublin, you know, because because they've been there since Queen Elizabeth I, you know at that time, and ours is only a new place, you know, that from the 19th century, and we think that they look down on us, but we think that we're better than them, you know, because they put on all their airs and graces and all that. Okay, go ahead. Thank you. So, the official symbol of Ireland is the harp, right? And it's interesting, isn't it, that Ireland, when they pick a symbol of the country, they pick a musical instrument, right? Isn't it? So it's kind of nice. So, and of course, Ireland is bilingual, right? So everything is in both languages. So rialtas is the word for government, and obviously Nahéireann is for Ireland. Even Irish names that we think are Irish. Say if your name is Mary O'Donnell, and we say, well, Mary O'Donnell, she must be Irish with a name like that, right? But that's the English form of it. In Irish, it would be Máire ní Gondal, you know. So they're different. They're kind of the languages and the names are kind of interesting and complicated. Okay, go ahead. So most Irish instruments most instruments in Irish music come from someplace else. We use the fiddle playing Irish music, but the fiddle is not Irish, right? And the harp comes from someplace else too. The really traditional Irish instrument that we have ourselves is the bodhrán, and the bodhrán is an Irish drum, right? That they play in the sessions. Go ahead. All right. So and it's Ireland's oldest traditional music instrument, iconic Irish drum, one of a small select family of Celtic instruments that is dated to date pre-Christianity. And so if you're at a traditional Irish music session, you have a fiddle, maybe you have a tin whistle, maybe you have a flute, maybe you have a guitar, and you will have a bodhrán. Now, traditional musicians, purists, say, I hate when somebody comes into a traditional music session with the bodhrán, because they bang, 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 and you can't hear the fiddle, and you can't hear the person singing, you can't hear the guitar and anything. So one famous traditional musician called Seamus Ennis, who was a famous piper, they asked him, Mr. Ennis, what's the best way to play the bodhrán? He answered, with a penknife. You know, so you tear it, right? And so nobody can hear it. Okay, go ahead. All right. So next another symbol, right, is that they use the harp on the government material, but also on the pint of Guinness, right? You know, so maybe the real symbol of Ireland is not a letter that you get from the government. It's not your birth certificate. It's a pint of Guinness. You know. So anybody ever drink a pint of Guinness? Okay. It's what's your name, sir? Steve. Any comment on it?
Oh, it's wonderful.
Okay. If you were reviewing it, how would you describe the texture of a pint of Guinness?
It's smooth and it's more mild than you would expect.
Okay. All right. It kind of looks like a meal in itself, doesn't it? You know, people would say about Guinness, in Ireland, there's eating and drinking in it. You know, eating and drinking. Go ahead. What's your name?
What is Antoine.
Antoine.
Guinness, Guinness.
So it is. It's a drink, and it's made from barley, and it's brewed in Dublin, and it's the most famous Irish drink, I suppose. Well, there's Irish whiskey as well, and it has a kind of a rich flavour to it. It's a little bit sour too, but alcoholic, yeah. But there's Guinness Zero now too, so you can and. No, it's always cool. But in Ireland, it's served a little bit warmer in the wintertime. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, it is a beer. Yeah, it is a beer. But it's called a stout. The type of beer is a stout. Guinness Stout. I mean, that's what distinguishes it, say, from a lager or from a pale ale, right? It's a stout, but it comes from barley. All right. So that's Guinness. So go ahead, B. The most visited tourist site in Dublin, of course, is the Guinness Brewery, right? So it's the Guinness storehouse. Very interesting, right? And of course, in the 18th, 17th century, 18th century, 19th century, we did not have very much industry, right? But Guinness was one that was very important. It's also the Guinness family also are very important because if you were employed by Guinness, you were employed, and your family members were employed, and then your sons and daughters were employed. So there were good employers, and they also built housing for their workers right around the brewery. All right, so. Of course, most people in this room are below the drinking age, So you would never have sampled any alcohol in your life, right? I know that would be absolutely and utterly impossible. Yes, go ahead. The drinking age is 21. Oh no, sorry. Drinking age in America is 21. Drinking age is 18. 18, yeah. So I say to my students before they go to Ireland, I said, now there's lots of stuff going on in pubs in Ireland, But I said, if you go to a pub in Ireland, a bar in Ireland, you don't have to drink. They have coffee, and they have tea, and they have mineral water, and they have Coke and everything. And one student said to me one time, Professor Wall, if you think I'm going to spend all that money going to Ireland and going into a bar to drink tea, you're out of your mind, right? So. All right, so go ahead. So another piece of Irish iconography, something that is very important, from the Claddagh in Galway, the Claddagh ring, right? And the Claddagh ring has the heart on it for love, the crown for loyalty, and the clasped hands for friendship. And a number, not a lot, but a good few Irish people would use this as a wedding ring. Instead of a traditional wedding ring, you could get a Claddagh ring. So go ahead. And the Claddagh, of course, is a part of Galway, right? Galway people would say that this is not really the Claddagh, this is the Long Walk. But if you look across from the Long Walk, you see the Claddagh. But this is a kind of this is again an iconic image in the city of Galway. Anybody ever been to Galway? All right, so what's your name?
Glenda.
So you saw this, Glenda, right? Do you remember seeing this in Galway?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have a good time in Galway?
Always. We go every year.
Okay. So what's your favourite thing to do in Galway, Glenda?
The water. We have the most fun walking around.
Okay.
Look, you're right. Just the scenery and walking and
Okay.
meeting the people.
All right. Okay. Very good. Yeah, that's great. And so I'm glad to show you something that you've seen and that you like, right? That's good, right? So this is the Long Walk. There's a famous song, of course, that is mentioned. There's an American singer called Steve Earle. Well, I took a walk down, called the Galway Girl. So when you get to your phone, just Google the Galway Girl by Steve Earle. There's also a version of it by the great Irish accordion player Sharon Shannon. And so you can just the Gal. It's a fantastic song that is a celebration of Galway, you know. And the two most popular songs in Ireland, I think, in some ways in the last 20 years, were "The Galway Girl" by Steve Earle and "Wagon Wheel." You know that song by All Crow Medicine Show, right? But,
Bob Dylan.
yeah. So so these are two of the most popular songs. Okay, very good. So Ireland, the sea is very important in Ireland, right? And the ocean. It's an island about half the size of Missouri. All right, and they say you can't really have a road trip in Ireland because after 100 miles you go off a pier someplace and you're never seen again. So this is a vessel of the Irish Navy or Commissioner of Irish Lights, and so it's called Granuaile after a very famous Irish woman. So if we could just get one. Okay, so Granuaile, real name was Grace O'Malley. She was from County Mayo, and she was a pirate. So she went out on her ship from Achill Island and Clare Island here, and any English ships or any ships that were there, she'd jump on board and steal all the goods and all that. So the Queen Elizabeth I said, we'll have to sort this lady out. So Queen Elizabeth brought her over to the court, and she wowed all the lords and ladies of the English court. This Irish woman with these strange clothes and who was a pirate queen, and Elizabeth got on very well with her, and so Elizabeth sent her back to Ireland and said, you know, you're not going to be a pirate anymore. And Granuaile says, no, I won't be a pirate anymore. So she went back to Ireland, and of course she did become a pirate, but maybe in a quieter kind of way than before. So there are certain iconic women in Irish history, you know. So Bridget is one, Granuaile is another. In the great Irish literary epic, The Táin, the great figure is Queen Maeve, and Queen Maeve, of course, there's a Queen Maeve's burial site in County Sligo, you know, because you went to there, right? Knocknarea, all right. Knocknarea in Irish, translated into English, the Hill of the Kings and Queens, right? So Granuaile had an interesting way of dealing with husbands. If she didn't like him and she was getting tired of him, she'd kill him and then get another one, right? So this is in a book called The Táin, which is the Irish Odyssey. You know, the T-A-I-N, The Táin. Okay, go ahead. Very good. Okay, so where are we now? Okay, this is my own part in County Wexford, in the Irish southeast, and this is the. They say this is the oldest lighthouse in the world. So this is Hook Head, and originally the original lighthouse were the monks lighting fires, you know, to warn shipping of the rocks, you know. So this is in the southeast corner, and I also wanted to show you the barley fields. So the barley would be harvested around now, August into September, right? And a lot of it then would be sold to Guinness and to Jameson and for those kinds of companies. So in the old days, of course, they used to the lighthouse people used to live on the lighthouse. And my father, when he was a journalist years and years ago, he would go visit the lighthouse keepers and chat with them and everything, you know, and the children didn't like it that much, you know, because there were no friends on the lighthouse, right? You know, you were just there. So most people don't visit County Wexford in the southeast of Ireland, but it's a very interesting part of it. The name of it, Wexford, translated means West Fjord. So all of our Irish towns were founded by the Vikings, right? So it's Fjord in Norse, right? You know, so Waterford is Weisford, is Waterford, and Wexford is Weisfjord. So these fjords were we didn't have towns really in Ireland until the Vikings came, and you know, so the Viking names are still part of it. Would you like to live in a lighthouse? No. If you were kind of fed up of people, right? What's your name? Amy. Amy, you'd be happy enough living in a lighthouse. What would the advantage, Amy, be of living in a lighthouse?
A lot of quiet time.
Okay, all right. You'd need to have a Kindle maybe and a good internet connection and all of that, right? You know, but there's something to be said for kind of being on your own every now and then, isn't there? You know, and not to be bothered. Other people would say, like my mother would have said, if I was in a lighthouse for 5 minutes, I'd go out of my mind, you know, because there'd be nobody to talk to. All right, okay, go ahead. So here's our potatoes. A number of years ago, my daughter, to make me happy, for my birthday, she served the food, but the most important thing she did was she served 4 potato dishes, you know, and I was like I had died and gone to heaven. Yeah, for any Irish person, right? You get not just, so we had baked potatoes, we had mashed potatoes. She sent her husband out to buy French fries at Steak and Shake, and then she also had these roast potatoes. So I had 4 different potato dishes, and I was in heaven, you know. So, and of course nowadays you say Irish people are much more sophisticated. You know, they eat rice and they eat pasta and all that kind of thing. But still, when you go to Irish houses, there's always potatoes, and we have very many different kind of varieties of potatoes in Ireland, and you'd hear people debating various potatoes. Do you like these Kerr's Pinks? Oh, the Kerr's Pinks are okay, but I prefer Golden Wonders, or I prefer new potatoes, or the one that people find most amusing. My favourite variety of potatoes are British Queens, you know, and all that. So, and of course, when you think of Ireland, you think of potatoes. But of course, they're not native to Ireland, right? You know, people argue where the potatoes come from. Peru. If you say Peru, most people won't argue with you too much. You know, so. All right, next one then. The greatest tragedy in Irish history was the potato famine, and the potato famine happened between 1845 and 1849. It was the greatest catastrophe in Europe between the Black Death, you know, the plague, and the Holocaust in the 1940s. 1 million people died. And an argument among the historians, was the potato famine genocide? Did the British just allow it to happen and the people to die? And a lot of people believe that. Others will say, well, no, it's more to do with laissez-faire economics of the 19th century. If something is happening, you just let it play itself out, and you don't get involved. You know, so they're the two debates. Most people, Irish people in America, will be able to trace if you trace your family, it'll go back to that time. Does anybody? Is there a story in your family of connected to the famine about that you know when your ancestors came to America? Any? Yes, what's your name? Mary. You can't have a more Irish than it. Among our family, there's so many Marys that we always have to use a second name so we know which Mary we're talking about. So go ahead, Mary. Okay, all right. And do you know where your family landed in America? Okay, all right. Very good. Yeah, so that's right. So, and I think if you go, you would find a lot of that in the history. Another interesting part, though, of course, are the Scotch Irish, which we've heard a lot, right? So these would be mostly Protestant Irish who came in the 18th century, before the famine, right? You know, and there would be a lot of people of Scotch-Irish background in Missouri and in other places. Anybody here Scotch-Irish? Okay, and what's your name? Brendan. Another Irish name, right? Another famous saint, Saint Brendan. They say Saint Brendan came to America about 800 years before who?
Before Columbus.
Before Columbus. That's right. Yeah, very good. Yeah. So you have some of the Scotch-Irish in your family?
That's what they say.
Okay.
We think some of them came from then and then went to Germany before
Okay.
coming here too.
Okay. All right. That's right. That's right. And a lot of people would have gone someplace. More people would have gone to England first, to Liverpool, and then come here. Very good, very good. So the Scotch-Irish are very important. There's a great historian, he retired recently from Mizzou, Kirby Miller, who wrote a book called Emigrants and Exiles. And it's a fantastic book that about a history that involves Irish immigration, but specifically of the Scotch-Irish, Irish who were Protestant. A lot would have been Presbyterians from the Northeast, right? Irish nationalism, fighting against the English, right? Irish nationalism was invented by the Presbyterians, right? You know, by Protestants, you know, who were used to protesting. Yeah, go ahead, Brendan.
There's also a story that some of our ancestors were Spanish-Irish or from the sinking of the Spanish Armada.
Right.
Is there any credence to that being a real?
There's credence to it if you want to believe it. But a lot of the experts nowadays said, no. So why, if you're over in Galway, why are there so many very dark-haired people? Oh, these were people from the Armada and they came into Ireland, you know. So, I mean, I kind of like to believe it because it's a good story, but the experts will say, no. As we say in Ireland, never let the truth get in the way of a good story, you know. So, all right. Okay. So anyway, before we go on, I won't show you all this, but during the famine, the Choctaw Nation donated money for famine relief to Ireland. And at this time, the Choctaw Nation were as poor as the Irish, you know. So they made this donation, and the reason I show this, of course, that we're almost in Oklahoma, right? You know, so it's very close here, and the emotional impact from among Irish people of this gift continues to this day. Irish people consider this gift it was only about $120, I think, at the time, to be extremely important. And as a kind of thank you, the Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar went to the Choctaw Nation, and the gift that the Irish nation have given in return are scholarships for Choctaw students to come to study in Ireland. You know, so it's in some ways it's a footnote in Irish history, but this story, everybody knows this story in Ireland, you know, because it is a story of generosity, you know, and so it's important. And it's also, of course, the Irish at this time were very much under a bad colonial kind of situation, you know. So it's one community that was suffering, helping another community that was suffering. So there's also then, this was erected in Cork, not that long ago. This was just the Kindred Spirits sculpture in Middletown, County Cork. Yes, go ahead.
Did I hear that Oklahoma is also going to put up one of these to correspond with
I think so. I think that's right.
ongoing relationship?
Yes, there's an ongoing relationship. They're absolutely right, you know. So it's very interesting, you know. And a few years ago, there's a book came out about this, and I wrote a piece for it, and I didn't know what to write on. So I asked the editor, well, what will I write on? He said, write an article on the Choctaw writer Lewis Owens. And of course, because I found out that he was part Irish, You know, and then doing the research, I also found out that another very well-known Native American author, James Welch, who's from Montana, was also partly Irish. You know, so there are these connections. Okay, very good. Go ahead. This is the main fuel in Ireland, right? A traditional fuel, turf. And grown in the wetlands. It burns in a smoky kind of way. And if you go into a house with a traditional turf fire, first thing you do is start coughing, you know. But then you get used to it. The wetlands in Ireland are very important. But the European Union, who's the big daddy of Europe now, you know, says, you know, if by taking all the turf out, you're destroying all the wetlands, you know. So now the European Union has said you have to stop this turf cutting, and Irish country people are very annoyed about this because a lot of Irish people go out into the country and dig the turf, and they put it in these ricks here and let it dry, and then bring it home and use it in the summer or in the winter time. So it's traditional Irish fuel. They say Scotch whiskey has a smoky taste to it, you know, so and a turfy kind of smoky taste to it. Irish whiskey doesn't, except for Bushmills. The whiskey that's made in the north has this kind of turfy kind of thing to it, you know. So at the bottom, just a little thing. I won't play this, but a lot of bodies were found in bogs. And these bodies, these were people who had been killed and executed, you know, for various crimes, maybe 500, 800, 1,000 years ago. And the bodies, the property of the bogs preserves the bodies. There's a famous one in the museum in Dublin, in the National Museum, and there's a number of them in England and in Denmark as well. These bog bodies that have been found. Okay, good. So, Irish industry and Irish expertise. What's the best thing we ever built? The Titanic, right? You know. So, and you say to people, well, how about the Titanic? You know, you said it's Belfast people, and they said, well, it was fine when it left here. You know. So, otherwise, it was some sabotage took place. So go ahead. Nowadays, of course, there's the Titanic Museum in Belfast. It's a fabulous museum to go visit. The shipyards have pretty much closed down. There were great shipyards in Belfast and in England, and most of that work shifted to Asia. But there's a great one here. There's also a film studio here where lots of Games of Thrones. Have you ever seen any of that? Very violent, but kind of good, you know. Was made there. Okay, good. All right. So then, Belfast is part of the north of Ireland, right? And from 1968 to 1998, we had the Troubles that took place. There was a lot of violence, there was a lot of murder and everything. It grew out of a civil rights movement influenced by Dr. Martin Luther King and what happened in America for civil rights, but it kind of morphed into something that was could be very brutal and very horrible. So and it features a lot in the music of contemporary Irish music. So we'll play a short little clip from the Cranberries. Have you heard of the Cranberries? Okay, Dolores O'Riordan. She passed away a few years ago. We lost two wonderful singers in the last few years, Dolores O'Riordan of the Cranberries, and more recently Sinead O'Connor. Right? You know. So we'll just have a little bit of Zombie. One way to understand the Troubles is through the music and through the film. So this is just a little clip of this. So I tell my students just to work on the internet, work on your phone. Not that I need any encouragement to work on phones, but you'll find all this, right? And also these videos, like the Cranberries, tells you what the Troubles look like. They're visually very interesting. Okay, good. So now we're into Dublin. This is an iconic building in Dublin, the GPO, where the main part of the Rising took place in 1916. And it's mentioned, of course, in the Cranberry song. She mentions 1916. Okay, good. What's the most famous book ever written, except Ulysses, right? Now, you could say it'd be kind of hard to read the Book of Kells, because it's in Latin. But most people have the same trouble trying to read Ulysses in English, right? So it's one day, or it's kind of more than one. It goes into the next day, right? It's about 800 pages, 2 characters. Nothing happens much, really. And the last section of it is Molly Bloom's soliloquy. It's wonderful, but it's like 70 pages with 8 full stops, 8 periods, so it's but for me it's a wonderful book. Anybody ever read it or try to read it? Yeah, you got it. What's your name? Yeah, any thoughts?
I love James Joyce. He's one of my favorite authors.
Okay, good man, that's great, thank you. Because most people, the first person to raise their hand says, yeah, I gave up after page 10, all right. People say Ulysses was banned in lots of places, but it was never banned in Ireland at a time when all kinds of books were being banned in Ireland. And one of the reasons that wasn't banned, the censors really couldn't understand it, so they didn't know what, there was, and the really juicy stuff is at the end, so they probably wouldn't have got beyond page 3, so there was no way that could have been banned. Okay, go ahead, Via, thank you. So the new Irish, Rashida Adeleke, she won the NCAAs this year at 400 meters. She runs for the University of Texas. She is from Dublin. She finished 4th in the World Championships last week. And of course, she is a representative of what's known nowadays in Ireland as the new Irish. People who have come to Ireland from Nigeria, from Brazil, and from all those other countries that I mentioned. There was a famous Irish musician called Phil Lynott. Did you ever hear of him? Philip Lynott. Did you ever hear of a band called Thin Lizzy? All right. So if you had a misspent youth, like I did, and spend a lot of times in taverns, you would put money in the jukebox. And one of the songs that was always on the jukebox was Thin Lizzy, The Boys Are Back in Town. You ever hear that one? So the boys are. So Phil Lynott was a musician in Dublin and went to London in the 70s. And he said, I had terrible trouble getting an apartment. And they said, why? He said, it was impossible at that time in London to rent an apartment if you were Irish. It was also impossible at that time to rent an apartment in London if you were black. And I come along, I am black and Irish. I had no hope of getting an apartment, So he often told that story. So Phil Lynott, again, a great character. So we're almost done. The new immigrants to Ireland have started to write poems and stories and everything. So this anthology came out about 2 or 3 years ago. The New Irish Poets, written by people from all over the world. Okay, good. So I was supposed to end, this is the Aviva Stadium. So Newgrange is the old place, 5,000 years old, right? So this is the new one. This is the stadium where the Irish rugby team play and the Irish soccer team play. They have concerts there too in the summer. The Irish rugby team are the #1 rated rugby team in the world. And the World Cup takes place, I think, next month. So they're hoping to do well. So go ahead. But last weekend, who was playing in the Aviva Stadium? Notre Dame against Navy, and they won by an enormous, 30-3 or something, All right. So You think that I'm very clever with my objects, right? But I'm not clever at all. I borrowed this whole idea from this Irish writer, Fintan O'Toole, who did a series in the Irish Times, The History of Ireland in 100 Objects. Okay. All right, and I'm going to end with one little song. So Ireland is a Celtic country, and it's a great Celtic country. It's a fantastic Celtic country. But there are other Celtic countries as well. So as you were thinking of Ireland this semester, also think of Scotland, of Cornwall, of Brittany, of Wales, of the Isle of Man, of Galicia, of these other places. So we're going to end with just a little piece of we started with a love song. We're going to end with a little bit of a love song from Edinburgh's finest, the Proclaimers.
He saw it, he claimed it, he touched it, he saved it. My tears are drying, my tears are drying. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. My tears are drying, my tears are drying. Your beauty and kindness, me tears clear my blindness. Why not? I realize that I will be with you. Why don't you put sunshine on me? I'm thanking for.
So one thing that the Irish we love to do is to sing, all right? And so do the Scots. It's a Celtic part of the thing. One thing that we were always told in Ireland, if you're a parent, you must sing to your child, you know. So it's very, and of course I think that's part of our American culture as well, like a song. So that's. If we had maybe 16 weeks, my jigsaw puzzle might come together and make some sense, or it might make you even more confused. But they're just little snippets. So any questions, any comments, any complaints? And go ahead. What's your name?
Martha.
Martha. Go ahead, Martha.
I have a
Oh,
question.
sorry.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm wondering, all of the nationalities that do come to Ireland, do they become Irish citizens? Is that allowed even by Ireland, or is it easy, difficult?
It's difficult, and we often hear about how difficult it is to become a citizen in America. It's not any easier in Ireland, and it's not always easy for Americans to become Irish citizens. So it's a complicated process. Though we do have people do become citizens. Excuse me, and there was a huge group became citizens this summer, and there was a wonderful ceremony, you know, with everybody there. But it's complicated. There is for asylum seekers in Ireland who came in not recently, but see, the Ukrainian crisis changed a lot of things. But before that, if you came to Ireland as an asylum seeker, a lot of people were put into a thing called direct provision, and they were housed in hotels and in community centres and everything. And a lot of these people continue to languish in these in these places. Excuse me. So it is a complicated. Where's my water there? It is complicated.
Well, are they required then to leave Ireland, say, once a year to go to another country to get their passports restamped, or can they just continue to live there without?
They can be sent home. They can be sent home, but you see, it becomes very complicated. For example, and this has happened more than once. A child goes to school. Say a child from Ethiopia or from Iraq, and goes all the way through school and becomes very friendly with all the other children. And then the government decides the family has to go home. So then the whole school and all the families rebels against it. So it stops. When it comes down to a human and a personal level, it becomes, you know. I think that you have to commend Ireland in recent times on all that they have done to take in people from the Ukraine. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic, and but most of the people from the Ukraine are allowed to work, whereas a lot of people from direct provision, the older asylum seekers, have never been allowed to work. So it's caused terrible mental health issues for people. And there's a book. About a book of poetry and material about direct provision that just came out a few years ago. And direct provision is one of those euphemisms, you know, but it's something that is interesting. A few years ago, I was asked to present medals at the elementary school in my hometown, and the medals. One of the sets of medals I was giving was proficiency in the Irish language, and the gold medal and the silver medal went to 2 Nigerian children for speaking Irish. And of course, why wouldn't they? Because if you grow up in Nigeria, you're speaking many languages, and Nigerians would often come to Ireland through some other country, so they might know German. So coming to Ireland and learning English and then learning Irish for a child is no big deal, you know. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
What's the secret to understanding James Joyce and reading James Joyce? Whoever loves it.
I think you begin with Dubliners, you know, and you read Dubliners, and you read that slowly and you absorb it. And particularly if you absorb the last story, The Dead, you know, which is a more complicated kind of story. Ulysses is not to everybody's taste, even in Ireland, you know. I always find the best way to read it is with other people. So when I've taught it as a seminar with 12 people, and everybody brings their bits of knowledge and everything to it, you know. So that was the way that was the most success I had was with like a community project. You know, let's get together and fix this house, or when instead of fixing this house, we're going to read Ulysses. Yeah. Any other questions? Or okay, so it's so great for me to be here and to be part of the beginning of this. If you look at the program, it's fantastic. So I hope that you'll be able to go along to some or not all of these events, and of course it's always a privilege for me to be able to come to an audience like this and to talk about Ireland. You know, in a sense, it takes away the homesickness to talk about home. Even though I've been here since 1982, I still get homesick. So it's always nice to talk about these things with you and to show you these images. So I think we're more or less out of time. Okay. All right. So thank you so much. Thank you.